We have an episode for you today. We will be talking about navigating divorce. Y'all, we are in for a time and we are excited. So let's jump right in.
Fantastic. My name is Chedwick and I will be interviewing the great couple today.
What's going on, everybody? You may or may not have heard me at some point talk about my ex-wife. Well, here she is. We're going to have a very transformational conversation today. It's going to be real. It's going to be raw. It's going to be authentic. What have we been through? Where are we now? How do we get here? And I can't wait to have this conversation with y'all.
Now, let's start right off the top. Could each of you share a favorite moment that still brings a smile to your face from your past life?
I will share a favorite moment. I can go first. The man should go first, depending on the situation.
Oh, that's how we start now. Okay.
You see why we're divorced? Anyway, so on our honeymoon, we went to Morocco. And in Morocco, one of the official languages is French. And at the time, Genevieve, who grew up speaking French in school, didn't feel fully comfortable speaking French in that context. And I kept challenging her and saying, speak French, speak French. They'd speak to her in French. I didn't know any French, so I had to rely on her. And she was reluctant to speak French in that context. So all of a sudden, one day we're walking through the market. A gentleman comes up. He's a snake charmer. He wraps a snake around my neck. And I tell him, what are you doing? Stop, right? He's looking for money. We don't pay him any money. Eventually, he takes the snake off of my neck. And then he's angry at us. He's grabbing us. He's grabbing Genevieve. And Genevieve's like, excuse me, don't touch me. I'm like, in French. Without thinking, Genevieve switches to French. It was amazing. And for the rest of the trip, nothing but French the whole time. It was a transformational moment.
Oh, that's funny. Yes, that was fun. That was good. That was a good time. A moment that still makes me smile. One of my favorite holidays is Christmas. Mm-hmm. And when we were dating, Samuel, knowing this, he arranged for us to go down to the distillery district. They had a Christmas market. So we were down there. It's cold. I don't like the cold, but I like Christmas. So we're outside walking around the distillery district. There's lots of vendors. There's people eating and there's lights and it's beautiful and so on. And I remember a moment we had gone into a store and I wanted to stay in the store. Mm-hmm. But he was like, let's go outside and, walk around. So we went outside and I was like, but I'm cold. I'm like complaining. And he was like, well, if you don't want to be cold, we should skip. And I was like, we're grown people. Downtown at the distillery district. This guy takes off skipping and he's like, let's go. And we skipped through the Christmas market at the distillery district. And it was a fun moment. And he gets silly sometimes. He's the more serious one out of the two of us. But in that moment, it was fun to skip and act like kids. And he had no cares in the world about who would see and all that stuff. And so thinking back to that moment definitely makes me smile.
That's fantastic. That made me smile. Now tell me, with all those great times that you had, what were the signs that first made you think that you're heading towards a divorce?
Yeah. Whew. I don't know. Am I going first?
You don't have any more soft questions? You're going.
Let's go deep.
Let's go deep.
Okay. I think from my perspective, one of the first signs, it wasn't external, it was more internal. There was an uneasiness about the, if I was getting sort of the full picture, I didn't quite understand certain things. There would be, certain movements, certain attitudes, certain responses, even certain answers, like when I would ask questions and things like that, that didn't quite align. And so there was an uneasiness that began to stir on the inside of me. And I think for me, those were the first questions about, hey, is this a viable situation for us? And maybe not even for us, for me. I had a certain picture in my mind about how marriage was supposed to go and how marriage was supposed to feel. Right. And it didn't feel that way. And so on the inside, I really started questioning. And I would say, if I'm honest, the feeling came up, and I think I shared this with you. The feeling came up the day after we got married. Mm-hmm. The day after. I don't know if you remember, we were at the car park. So we were sitting outside the car park in Brampton. We had a conversation. It was a really tough conversation that we had the day after we got married. And at that point, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I gotten into? And it was the beginning of the internal stirring. Right. If I think back, and I didn't know how to respond to it at the time.
How about you, Sam?
Yeah. So I think for me, for much of our marriage, I was struggling secretly to some degree with addiction. And so I was living this whole separate double life. I didn't know how to reconcile that with the life that I wanted to live and the person that I wanted to be. I was on my own trying to figure things out, right? Mm-hmm. So to Genevieve's point, there was a lot that she didn't know that I didn't reveal, but she could say. Right. And I think I didn't have a sense of the future and what would change. I was hoping things would change, mm-hmm. but I didn't have a clear picture of how or when or what would change. And I think the moment that divorce became a reality for me as an option was when kind of everything came out and we had a conversation. I, like beginning to end, I kind of laid everything out. Genevieve, she listened, she processed, and one of the first things she said, if not the very first thing she said was, I love you, but I won't stay with you. That hit me. And I don't know if I fully believed her or understood it, but that was the strongest and clearest statement. And that was when I realized the repercussions of what I'd been dealing with and what I've been doing, the decisions I'd been making.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, had he shared earlier, it would have made a difference?
100%. Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay. Absolutely. I think part of the struggle for me was the not knowing, but knowing, mm-hmm. and the not being able to function in what I believed was my role as a helper, because I didn't know what to help with. Part of what I see when I look back is the sense of helplessness that I had, but also the hope that I carried at the mm-hmm. same time. Mm-hmm. So there was an interesting duality that I was living. Right. And I know, like, if we could walk through it together, that would have been a completely different story. Right.
And I think to that point, I 100% believe Genevieve when she says that. With time passing and me understanding more about the nature of addiction and what happens, what's normal, what's common, is it's very isolating, right? People feel alone, even though there's nothing on earth that only one person's going through. And there's nothing on earth that is better off if you do it alone rather than if you get help. But in the moment, it can be very difficult. And it was very difficult for me at that time.
So in your role as a man, mm-hmm. do you think, had it not been addiction, had it been something else, would you have been as open to share?
That's a good question. I think in general, I skew a little bit more open. Mm-hmm. But I also think I, as a man, and many men, but I'll talk about me, also skew closed. We have a need to project that everything is okay.
Mm-hmm.
Or we can't put too much burden on our wife, on our woman, on our lady. I'm wired that way as well. So it's a mix, right? And it's something that I'm still kind of working through. I think now I skew much more on the side of transparency, for sure, having learned from my mistakes. But as a man, I'm like, I want to be honest, but I also want to make sure that I'm a man about it, right?
Yeah. And how do you feel about that? I know in some cases, men, they tend to hold things in hopes of the protection of their partner. However, the partner feels that it's something that they would like to be involved in and help with. But, is that a conundrum that women face?
I think we're wired as women, we are wired to support and to help.
Right.
I think that is a role and a function that, I don't know, it's natural to us.
Right.
I think maybe not natural. I should say we function well in that role. When it comes to the, what would you call it? I call it hiding. When it comes to the persona or the projecting of everything's okay, everything's fine, the strength, I'm the man and so on. I think it comes across as you aren't good enough to play this role for me. Right. Like, you can't help me.
Right.
And so then there's a strange disorienting that happens. Like, what am I here for? Mm-hmm. To help you, but you won't share with me so that I can help you. And it gets sometimes translated as you can't help me. Right. And so then it's sort of jarring as a woman. It's like part of my identity and my role is to do the supporting and the helping. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah. Great conversation so far. Now, answer me this. Can you describe the emotions that came through you before when you decided that you're going to heading for divorce?
Ooh, despair. I think I was overcome by despair at that time. I hadn't imagined a divorce into my lifeline, my life experiences. I had a very confident outlook on life. I did everything right, did it according to the Bible, all the things. And so when divorce came into the picture, I thought about so many things. But anyway, God was one of them. God hates divorce. I thought about like family members, like my parents and friends. I thought about so many things. And I think despair like overcame me at that time.
How about you?
I would be honest that the decision wasn't mine. I didn't feel at any point like I was in control of that decision. That in and of itself was tricky and difficult because I was trying to reconcile with what I wanted and what I felt was best. And I was trying to reconcile with what Genevieve wanted and what she felt like was best. And I was trying to discern what God wanted. And to Genevieve's point, there's also family to consider, there's friends, there's optics, right? So these are all factors. And I felt pretty helpless as far as the decision and how that would play out.
Right. Did it shake your faith any?
Yeah, I'll be honest. It definitely shook my faith in prayer and in questioning. I was like, the expectation comes out like, God, I did everything right.
Right.
Like what happened? And then there's the, God, are you not God?
Right, yeah.
You couldn't do something. You couldn't, I was mad at God, but I also knew that only God could bring me through.
Right.
So I had to lean in. And of course, his strength is perfect in my weakness. I had to lean in, but I was still very upset and confused at the time. And then, the months and years that came, there were still moments where I had to wrestle with God about what had happened. Like what happened here, So I think, it definitely affected my faith.
Yeah, I would say the same. I would say not that I did everything perfect, but I felt like I tried to cross my T's and dot my I's as far as what I expected. I tried to check, okay, am I ready for this? Can I handle this?
Yeah.
And is my wife on the same page? Those were all the things that I tried to solve for at the beginning. In marriage, none of that math was mathing anymore.
Yeah.
So it shook my expectations of what happened sequentially in life, what I was able to do, what God was able to do. All that was up for debate for a while, for sure.
Yeah.
So then, okay, you got to that point. How did you handle the aftermath of the actual divorce?
To Samuel's point, I was the one who spearheaded the initiation of the divorce.
Spearheaded the initiation. Wow.
Yes. Didn't it sound good? You know me. I'm a wordsmith. I'm gonna make it.
It sounded like
It's
entanglement.
beautiful. It's an entanglement. So I filed for the divorce.
Yeah.
And to Samuel's credit, I don't think, because we had a conversation like years later, and you entered the conversation not fully aware.
Let me tell you what not fully aware looks like. There's a man on my phone. He's calling me. He calls me 3 or 4 times over the course of 2 months.
Right.
One day I find some papers on the corner of the lot of my house, right? I'm just like, what are these papers for? They have my name on them. I open them up. I don't understand the papers. I'm not going to lie, right? And then maybe a year later, Genevieve and I are on a video call. We're talking. We're catching up. And I'm like, so yeah, what's next steps as far as divorce? And she's like, oh, we're already divorced. I'm like,
No. He said, what are next steps as far as counseling? You were like, let's do some counseling. And I was like, ooh. Yeah. So I feel like something is missing here. At that time, I had to I broke it to you. Like I was like, we're like, I already got the papers and so on. And he didn't actually know.
Right.
He didn't actually know. So when you're doing a divorce filing, if it's non-contested, you can just continue past the 30 days or whatever it takes. So I had already gone ahead and gotten the
bada bing, bada boom.
Yeah. And I was good to move on. But that was like 6 years. For how many years later?
I think that was
maybe 5 years.
I think it was 2 years after the divorce actually happened. Is when I found out. So I was telling people I was married for 2 years and I wasn't married.
Yeah. Wow. Oh. And the thing is, we weren't in communication. Like we were off doing our own things, doing our own lives, coping, growing, grieving on our own. It was interesting to, I didn't know.
How did you feel on that side of that?
It was weird for me because in my mind and heart, I had already moved on. Right. And in my mind and heart, you had already moved on. And so to be at that place it was jarring. I was like, what do you mean counseling? I don't understand. Why would we go to counseling? I don't know. Part of me felt a little bad at that time. I was like, yeah, for me, I heard it as hope on your end. I heard it as hope. Like, oh, maybe there's still a chance for us. And so, yeah, it pulled on my heartstrings.
And
a little
for
bit.
you, it was a bit of a finality. I think maybe how did you feel when that kind of hit you?
It definitely felt like a next chapter type of situation. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was a mixture of emotions for sure. Yeah. I was surprised. I was confused. I was a little bit sad, and I was also a little bit happy. Right, all of the above. Right.
Right.
Like, okay, so this is the status of this. Right. That's good to know. I wish we had done this way, but now that frees me to some degree to reposition my heart and my perspectives around this.
I mean, a lot of people go through this, and sometimes, in some cases, they've dragged it on for 10, 20, 30 years before they actually get to the divorce. What were your coping mechanisms? How did you, get through it?
I spent about 3 years of coping poorly. Specifically, I just checked out. Like I was still, in many senses, in active addiction to some degree, but I was in harm reduction mode. I was like, okay, these are the really bad behaviors. Can't go there. Got to stay away from that. Let's scale back. Let's do this. In all areas of life, there was nothing really happening that I was alive to. The way that I was living my life, I didn't want to feel anything real, because if I felt anything real, maybe it would hurt. Right. So for the first 3 years, that was my coping mechanism. Right. So I wouldn't recommend that as a course of action. Right. But that's what I was doing.
For me, I went to therapy. I went to therapy every single week. I had a therapist. I had a spiritual director. I had great friends, and I used my resources. Like I didn't lean in. I dove in deep. Right. I was like, I'm not missing a therapy session. Cause well, part of me knew, how beneficial therapy could be. Right. But I didn't know how to do this. Right. Like my life, it flipped upside down. Like I didn't even know who I was. I couldn't eat. And y'all know if I say I can't eat, there's a problem. Okay. Cause I like to eat. Yeah. I like food. I like the smell of food, the look of food, the taste of food. Listen, if I can't eat, there's a problem. I couldn't sleep. And if I can't sleep, there's a problem, because I like to sleep. So, I wasn't me. Right. I wasn't me. Like and I know my motivation was to find my footing again. Like I was untethered. I was like, those balloons, you're like blowing up a balloon and then you let it go and it just like goes out. That's how I felt. I was like a balloon losing air, like just fluttering all over the place. I didn't know how to find my way. I was like, who am I? Like, what has happened to my life? Right. And how do I go forward? And I needed grounding for that. And that came through therapy, through spiritual direction, through some really amazing girlfriends that I could speak with, that could offer me perspective, wisdom, prayer. And I did that. I went to support groups. So there's Al-Anon and those kind of things. I went to support groups. I was there religiously every week. Like I leaned into every resource that I could possibly lean into, because I wasn't fitting to die. I was not. And I felt like I was going to die on the inside. Right. And I was like, this is not going to take me out. Right. It's not.
It's very unusual for our community to lean into therapy. Did you take therapy?
I did. Okay. I have found in my experience that therapy hasn't been what's helped me the most. That's not to say anything about therapy as a practice, because it's obviously helped millions, maybe billions of people. But for me, I did lean into therapy, different types of therapy. And the experience that I had was, you meet a therapist and then you're evaluating at first, are you all fit? Right. And as you're evaluating that, you're spending money. Right. Then you're evaluating, can they help me get where I want to go? And depending on their modality, reveal things or clarify things or bring something out of you. I was like, this is who I am. This is where I am. This is who I want to be. This is where I want to be. Right. So going through that process, I went through numerous therapists. And in that process, I unveiled amazing key elements of who I was, and lots of helpful nuggets and practices and things that I still currently incorporate into who I am today. But in terms of actually getting from point A to B and becoming a different person, it wasn't therapy that did that for me, let's say.
Right. Okay. Do you find that most men especially men in the Black community? Do you find that they would lean into therapy at all?
I think it's rare. I think as time goes by, it's becoming more and more common. So we're trending in the right direction.
Right.
But I think like if I talk to my friends, maybe 3 out of 10 either go to therapy or are open to going to therapy at this point.
Right. At least it's a discussion.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
What about you? How do you feel about therapy?
I think it certainly is beneficial. Once it's someone that you connect with, and it's someone that's got your best interests at mind, then I absolutely believe in it. So during the entire grieving process, what was the toughest thing that you had to handle?
I'd say the commentary from family members, the message that I received when I finally confronted Samuel, and he broke down. He was very honest. He told me all the things. At that point, I knew it would hurt more to stay than it would to leave. And so I said to myself, Jen, you've got to go. And I moved back to my mom's. And part of the messaging that I received was I had failed at life. Like I wasn't prepared for real life. I didn't know what marriage was all about, what it took. And that was hard. Like that was probably the hardest thing to hear that message. Like you failed.
Right.
You're getting a divorce, you're leaving, you're separated. And the question wasn't like, Jen, what are you going through?
Right.
Like, how are you?
Yeah.
Like, what kind of pain could you be experiencing that would make you want to leave?
Right.
Right? It wasn't like that. It was like, oh, you don't know what marriage is, what it really takes.
Right. Yeah.
It's like, yo, if I could. But I think that was the hardest message.
Yeah.
That
sorry, you deserve that empathy. I'm sorry that you experienced that.
Yeah. Okay. Growth. How about you?
So there's this duality that I've had to hold that says and knows that I betrayed her immeasurably, more than I can know and understand. And there's also a part of me that has felt betrayed. To the first piece, maybe people in her family didn't or couldn't see what she was going through, and I still didn't and couldn't see what she was going through, and I've spent a lot of time seeking to understand what she was going through. I've invested in that, but to a degree I didn't need to, because I was there the nights when she would get up from the bed and be crying in the bathtub all night, right? And that broke me, right? I loved her, right? It broke me to listen to and watch the crying and know that I had a part in it, but I wasn't the one experiencing the pain and the trauma,
right,
and the hurt, right? So I had to live with that. I had to live with the fact that I was the cause of that pain and that harm and that hurt. At the same time, I think there was a feeling of abandonment while going through something that I didn't know how to deal with or reconcile or get out of. I didn't even know how to explain, and ask for help in the right ways at the right times without laying blame. Just the reality of how I felt was I wanted that help. I wanted that support. I wanted that partnership at a vulnerable, weak time. Seeing my part, but also wishing that I had that. That's been the hardest part, because those are both real feelings. Yeah.
This has been amazing. Thank you so much for being present here. And part of our willingness to be humble and to be vulnerable and to be transparent and to tell the story is really to add value. And to invite people into this space where there is hope, where there's belief, where there's imagination, where there's vision for the future and the future of our relationships. And our relationships, they can be great. They can be empowering and fulfilling and purposeful. They can be revolutionary. And I want us to really capture that in spite of pain, in spite of trauma, in spite of past, in spite of betrayal, in spite of divorce and loss, right? There is transformation in the transition, and we can do it. We can have quality relationships. So join us, continue to tune in for these transformational conversations. We'll be here. We're available for interviews as well as for podcast speaking engagements. If you want us to come to your organization, you love to travel, and we will come and hang out with y'all and talk about our journey. I don't know if y'all are going through a divorce. give us a call. I am a relationship coach at Corner Counselor, and we would actually be happy to come and add value to you if you're doing retreats, conferences. Divorce is a real thing, and we have to learn how to navigate it and do that well.
Wow.
Very good. Much better.